When my daughter-in-law told me to leave, I smiled instead of crying. It wasn't because I wasn't hurt. It was because I had no tears left. I remember that afternoon clearly. The house was quiet, too quiet for a home that once echoed with laughter. My son Ahmed sat on the sofa staring at the floor. His wife Aisha stood by the kitchen counter with her arms folded. I knew something was wrong even before she spoke. "Ami," she said softly, "maybe it's time you had your own space." I felt my hands grow cold. My own space. This was the house my husband built, the home I raised my son in. Every corner had my memories, the height marks on the wall, the curtains I sewed, the little dining table we used when money was tight. I looked at my son, hoping he would say something, but he didn't. He just kept staring at the floor, as if he couldn't bear to meet my eyes. That silence, it said everything. I tried to keep my voice steady. "Do you want me to go, Ahmed?" He hesitated. "Ami, it's not like that. We need some privacy. You deserve peace too." Peace, that word felt heavy. I had always believed peace meant being surrounded by your family, cooking for them, talking to them, feeling needed. But now, it seemed peace meant being away. That night, I packed my things quietly, a few clothes, some old photographs, and my husband's prayer beads. I didn't take much. The hardest part was taking my framed photo of Ahmed as a child, smiling, missing 2 teeth, holding my hand. Before leaving, I stood at the doorway and looked around one last time. The house looked different, cold, almost unfamiliar. I whispered a prayer under my breath. "Ya Allah, give them happiness, even if it's without me." As I stepped outside, I felt the evening breeze touch my face. For the first time, I realized how heavy silence can feel when it comes from the ones you love. I didn't know then that this was only the beginning, that what happened next would change how I saw love, family, and forgiveness forever. The first few nights after I left my son's house were the hardest. I stayed at my late husband's old home, a small, quiet place at the edge of the town. Dust had gathered on the windows, and the air smelled of memories long forgotten. I used to think silence was peaceful, but silence after rejection. It feels like a wound that never stops aching. Every morning, I made tea for 2 out of habit. Then I'd remember there was no one to pour it for anymore. I'd sit by the window, cup in hand, watching the sunlight move across the floor. Sometimes I'd hear my neighbors laughing with their children, and I'd smile, but inside, I felt hollow. I kept thinking about Ahmed, my only child. I had raised him with everything I had, through sleepless nights, through hunger, through tears. I used to believe a mother's love could never become a burden, but now, I wasn't so sure. A week after I left, he called. His voice was distant, polite, not like my son, but like someone speaking to a stranger. "Ami, are you okay there? Do you need anything?" I wanted to say, "I need my son. I need your voice, your presence, your warmth," but I only said, "I'm fine, Beta. Don't worry about me." He thanked me, told me he'd visit soon, and hung up quickly. That small pause before hanging up, that silence, told me he wouldn't come. I sat there, with the phone still in my hand, my eyes staring at nothing. I thought about Aisha, my daughter. She wasn't cruel, not at first. She had always been respectful, always smiling, but somewhere along the way, her kindness turned into cold distance. I remember the day she started calling me Ami G instead of Ami. It was a small change, but I felt the wall building between us. Maybe I talked too much. Maybe I interfered without realizing it. Maybe my presence reminded her that this house once belonged to another woman, to me. The days passed slowly. I began cooking small meals again, not because I was hungry, but because the sound of the spoon against the pot made the house feel alive. I prayed often, not for Ahmed to come back, but for his heart to stay kind. I told myself this pain was just part of being a mother, loving even when love isn't returned. Sometimes, late at night, I'd whisper, "Ya Allah, if I made mistakes, forgive me, but please, let my son remember me not as a burden, but as a mother who tried." I didn't know that life was about to test that prayer in ways I could never imagine. It was a Sunday afternoon when the first real crack appeared, the moment I understood something deeper was happening between my son and his wife. I had gone to visit them after almost a month. I baked Ahmed's favorite Kia, just like I used to when he was a boy. I even wrapped it in a clean white cloth, like my mother once did for me. I thought maybe it was time to bridge the distance. When I arrived, Aisha opened the door. Her smile was polite, but her eyes didn't match. "Oh, Ami G, you came without calling," she said, glancing over her shoulder. I wanted to surprise you, I replied softly. I made Ahmed's favorite. She hesitated, then stepped aside. Please come in. The house felt different. My old family pictures were gone from the living room wall. The curtains were new, the furniture rearranged. Everything looked beautiful, but it no longer felt like home. Ahmed came out from the study, his expression caught somewhere between love and guilt. Amy, you should have told me you were coming. I smiled to hide the sting. If I told you, it wouldn't be a surprise. We sat down for tea. Aisha barely spoke. Ahmed tried to keep the conversation light, asking about my health, my neighbors, the weather. But the warmth between us, the easy laughter we used to share, was gone. When I offered him the Kia, he smiled politely and said, Aisha doesn't like too much sugar, so we've cut down on sweets. Something in me sank. I wasn't angry, just quiet. I watched as he took a tiny spoonful, then pushed the bowl away gently. It wasn't about the Kia, it was about what it meant, my small acts of love, the meals, the care, the effort no longer belonged in his new world. After a few minutes, Aisha stood up and said, Excuse me, I need to check on something, and went to the kitchen. Ahmed followed her. I could hear their voices, low, hurried. I couldn't make out the words, but I knew they were about me. I sat there alone at the table, staring at the untouched bowl of Kia. I wanted to cry, but I didn't. I just folded my hands and waited until they came back. When I left that evening, Aisha didn't walk me to the door. Ahmed did, but even that felt forced. Before I stepped out, I said quietly, Beta, I'll always be here if you need me. He nodded, but his eyes were distant. As I walked home, the evening breeze felt colder than usual. That was the moment I realized love doesn't always disappear with shouting or fights. Sometimes, it fades quietly, one small moment at a time. And somewhere, deep inside, I began to wonder, was my daughter-in-law simply protecting her marriage, or was she trying to erase me from my son's heart? A few weeks passed after that uneasy visit. I tried not to think too much about it, convincing myself that maybe I was being sensitive. Mothers worry too easily, I told myself. But deep down, something inside me already knew things were changing in ways I couldn't control. One afternoon, I decided to drop off a basket of fresh fruit at their house. I didn't plan to stay long. I just wanted to see them, maybe have a short chat. The door was unlocked, so I gently pushed it open. I could hear voices, Ahmed and Aisha, coming from the living room. They hadn't noticed I was there. I was about to call out when I heard Aisha say something that froze me in place. She's a good woman, Ahmed, but she makes me feel like a guest in my own home. Every time she comes, it feels like she's checking if I'm doing things her way. My heart stopped. Ahmed sighed. She doesn't mean harm, Aisha. She just doesn't know how to let go. Then, maybe you need to help her, Aisha replied firmly, because I can't live like this anymore. I feel suffocated. I stood there, my hands trembling, the basket still in my arms. I didn't want to hear more, but I couldn't move. My son's voice was quiet, tired. I'll talk to her, he said softly. I just don't want to hurt her. That sentence broke me, not because he said he'd talk to me, but because he said it like a man forced to choose between two worlds. I placed the fruit basket quietly on the table and slipped out before they could see me. My steps were slow, heavy. Every sound around me felt distant. The birds, the passing cars, even my own heartbeat. When I reached home, I sat down by the window and stared at nothing for a long time. I kept replaying those words in my head. She makes me feel like a guest. I never wanted to control anything. I only wanted to belong. That night, I couldn't sleep. I thought about all the times I might have unknowingly overstepped, moving a cushion, suggesting a recipe, folding their laundry, things mothers do without thinking. But maybe for her, those were small invasions. Still, hearing it from her lips, it felt like being erased from my own family. The next morning, Ahmed called. His voice was careful, almost rehearsed. Amy, maybe you should call before coming next time. Aisha feels a bit overwhelmed. I closed my eyes. Of course, Beta, I understand. After we hung up, I sat quietly for a while. There was no anger in me, just an ache I couldn't name. It was the sound of a door gently closing, not slammed, but still closing. That day, I promised myself I would step back, no matter how much it hurt, because sometimes love means letting go, even when you're the one being let go of. Time has a strange way of stretching when you're lonely. Days turn into weeks, and weeks start blending into each other. That's how it was after that conversation with Ahmed. At first, I waited for his calls, like I always did. Every evening, I'd keep my phone nearby while I cooked dinner. I'd look at the screen every few minutes, hoping to see his name light up. But the calls grew less and less frequent, from every day to once a week, then once every few weeks. When the phone finally rang, I'd rush to answer, pretending I hadn't been waiting all day. Assalamualaikum, beta, I'd say, trying to sound cheerful. His voice would come, warm but hurried. Walaikum salam, mom. How are you? Everything okay? He always asked the same questions. I always gave the same answers. I'm fine, beta, don't worry about me. But every time the call ended, I sat in silence for a long while, holding the phone like a piece of him I didn't want to let go of. One evening, I decided to visit the small park near my house. I hadn't been there in months. I sat on a bench under a big neem tree, watching children play. Their laughter filled the air, so carefree, so full of life. I smiled, remembering when Ahmed was that age. He'd run to me with scraped knees and tear-stained cheeks, and I'd kiss his forehead and say, "It's all right, my brave boy." Now, he had someone else to wipe his worries away, and maybe that's how it should be. But still, the emptiness inside me kept growing. A few days later, I tried calling him. The phone rang and rang, then went to voicemail. I left a short message. "Ahmed beta, I just wanted to hear your voice. I hope you're doing well." He didn't call back, not that day, not the next. I told myself he was busy. Work, family, life, they all take time. But deep inside, I knew something had shifted. The distance wasn't just miles anymore. It was in our hearts. Even the neighbors started asking less about him. I could see the sympathy in their eyes when they passed by my gate. They didn't say it out loud, but I knew they noticed. The quiet, the loneliness, the waiting. One night, as I sat by the window, I whispered to myself, maybe this is how mothers fade, not in a single moment, but slowly, as their children build new lives. Still, I prayed for him every night. I never asked for him to come back. I only asked Allah to keep him safe, to keep his home peaceful, and to keep my love alive in his heart, even if it lived there silently. Because a mother's heart doesn't stop loving just because it's forgotten. It just learns to love quietly, from a distance. It started as a small fever. Nothing serious at first. I told myself it would pass in a day or two. But by the third night, the fever had grown stronger. My head pounded, and every breath felt heavy. The little house that once felt quiet now felt suffocating. I tried to get up to make tea, but my legs trembled beneath me. I sat back down, gripping the edge of the table for balance. I looked at the phone lying beside me. I wanted to call Ahmed, but something stopped me. Maybe pride, or maybe fear. Fear of hearing the hesitation in his voice again. Fear of being told he was busy. Still, a mother's heart always hopes. So I called. The phone rang several times before Aisha answered. "Assalamu Ami ji," she said, her tone polite but distant. "Wa alaikum salam, beta," I whispered. "Is Ahmed home?" "He's resting," she said. "He had a long day." "Is everything okay?" I hesitated. My throat was dry, just a little fever. I thought I'd hear his voice, that's all. "Oh, I'm sorry, Ami ji. I'll tell him you called." And then she hung up. I stared at the phone, the silence around me feeling heavier than ever. I told myself maybe she really would tell him, maybe he'd call back. But the night passed, and the call never came. The next morning, I woke up shivering. My body ached, and my lips were cracked from thirst. I managed to boil a little water and took some medicine from the old drawer. As I lay down again, I looked at the empty chair near my bed, the one Ahmed used to sit in when he visited. I could almost see him there, laughing, teasing me about my overcooked parathas. Tears filled my eyes, not because of the pain, but because I realized I could disappear from their lives, and they might not even notice right away. Around evening, my neighbor Shabana knocked on my door. "Baji, are you all right? I haven't seen you outside for 2 days." I forced a smile. "Just a small fever, nothing to worry about." She brought me some soup and stayed for a while. Her kindness felt like sunlight through a window, gentle and unexpected. When she left, I whispered a quiet prayer for her. Sometimes, strangers care more than family. That night, I looked at my phone one last time before closing my eyes. Still no call. I thought of Ahmed's face as a boy, those bright, curious eyes that once looked at me like I was his whole world. I wondered when that gaze changed as I drifted to sleep. I realized this was more than illness. It was a kind of loneliness that medicine couldn't cure, the kind that comes when love forgets to look back. 3 days passed after the fever began to fade. I was weak, but I thanked Allah that I could finally stand without my hands shaking. I opened the curtains that had stayed closed for days. The sunlight felt warm on my face, almost like a blessing. That afternoon, as I was folding some clothes, I heard a knock on the door. For a moment, my heart skipped. Could it be, maybe he finally came? I wiped my hands quickly and opened the door. It wasn't Ahmed, it was Aisha. She stood there in a clean, pressed dress, holding a small bag of groceries. Her face carried that same polite smile, kind enough to look caring, but not close enough to feel like love. Assalamu alaikum, Amiji, she said softly. I heard you weren't feeling well. I brought you some things. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to hug her. Another part wanted to ask why she didn't come sooner, but I simply said, Wa alaikum salam beta. Come in. She walked in, looking around the room. I could see her eyes noticing the simple furniture, the medicine on the table, the half-empty bowl of soup. You shouldn't stay alone when you're sick, she said. I smiled faintly. It's all right. Allah takes care of those who have no one. Her lips pressed together, but she didn't reply. She placed the groceries on the counter and began unpacking them. Fruit, milk, some bread. She moved quietly, efficiently, like she was completing a duty. Then she said something that caught me off guard. Ahmed wanted to come, but he's been very busy lately. I looked at her, trying to read her eyes. Busy, yes, he always is, I said gently, but thank you for coming, Beta. She looked down for a moment, maybe out of guilt, maybe out of discomfort. He worries about you, Amiji, she added softly. He just doesn't know how to show it sometimes. I nodded, even though my heart didn't believe it. Mothers know, I said. We always know. A small silence filled the room, not cold this time, just heavy. Before she left, she said, if you need anything, please call me. I smiled. I don't need much, dear. Just prayers. After she was gone, I sat quietly for a while. The air still smelled faintly of her perfume. I should have felt comforted, but instead, I felt emptier. Her visit reminded me that kindness without warmth feels like a formality, something done out of obligation, not love. Still, I thanked Allah for that little mercy. At least someone knocked on my door that night. As I looked out the window at the quiet street, I whispered, maybe someday they'll come, not because they have to, but because they want to. I didn't know it then, but that wish, that small, quiet wish, was about to come true in a way I never expected. It was a quiet Sunday morning when I heard another knock on my door. I thought it was my neighbor again, maybe bringing fresh bread from the bakery. But when I opened the door, it was Ahmed. For a moment, I couldn't move. He looked different, tired, older, but still my boy. Behind him stood Aisha, holding a small bouquet of white flowers. Ami, he said softly. Just that one word. It broke something inside me, the wall I'd built around my heart these past months. I tried to smile, but my eyes filled with tears. Ahmed, Beta, you came. He nodded and stepped forward. For a moment, he just looked at me, really looked at me, as if seeing his mother for the first time in years. Then he wrapped his arms around me, and I felt his shoulders shake. I'm sorry, Ami, he whispered. I should have been here. I should have never let you feel alone. I held him close, my trembling hand on his back. It's all right, Beta. You're here now. That's enough. When we finally sat down, the house felt alive again. Aisha quietly made tea in the kitchen for the first time. I saw something new in her eyes, not distance, but regret. She brought the tray over and placed it gently on the table. Amiji, she said softly, I'm sorry for everything. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just wanted to find my place in this family, but I forgot you were the one who built it. Her words took me by surprise. I could see the sincerity in her face. My heart softened instantly. Beta, I said, every home has enough room for more love. You never needed to fight for your place. You already had it. For the first time in a long while, she smiled, not politely, but warmly. Ahmed looked at me, his eyes glistening. I was so caught up in work, in life, I didn't realize how far I'd drifted. When I heard you were sick, I felt like I'd failed you. I reached for his hand. You didn't fail me, Ahmed. Life pulls us in different directions. What matters is that love brings us back. We sat together for hours, talking, laughing, remembering small things. The air felt lighter, the house warmer. Even the silence between us felt peaceful again. Before they left, Ahmed said, Ami, I want you to come stay with us again. I smiled and shook my head gently. No, Beta, I'm fine here. but you come often. Bring laughter with you. That's all a mother needs. He kissed my forehead, and for a moment, I felt like the world had righted itself. After they left, I sat by the window as the evening light poured in. I whispered a quiet prayer, not for more time, not for forgiveness, but for gratitude. Because sometimes, the people we love do find their way back, not when we call them, but when they finally hear the silence we leave behind. Sometimes, love doesn't end with anger. It fades quietly, and then returns when hearts are ready to listen again. A mother's love never asks for repayment. It simply waits, through silence, through distance, through time. In the end, forgiveness is not about forgetting what hurt us. It's about remembering who we are when we choose to love again. If this story touched your heart, hold your family a little closer tonight, because no matter how far we drift, a mother's prayer will always find its way home.